the harder I have tried to make things happen, the more blockages I got from life. Let me give you a very simple example. A few months ago, I was practicing a yoga pose, which is called the flying splits. And for some reason, I made it my goal, my mission. I made it my goal to get the pose within 2 weeks. I don't know why I chose 2 weeks. It's a deadline that I put on myself. And so based on that deadline, I started training for the pose. And as the deadline was approaching and I saw that the pose had not been yet integrated, I started to practice even more. In other words, at some point I started to overtrain. And I realized that I found myself in a situation where I was forcing the process so much. Like I was so attached to the outcome, so attached to, in 2 weeks I am going to do this pose no matter what, that it didn't happen. Not only did it not happen, but I also didn't enjoy the process because there was a very dominating sense of obligation during the process, and that took a lot of my vital energy. And that's when I realized that all the times that I have tried really hard to make things happen, I distanced myself from the thing to actually happen. Now here's the cool thing about this. When I was watching a couple of the interviews with Michael Jackson, it really caught my attention how his songwriting process went. And that's because they asked him, how do you create songs? How does the process look like? Michael Jackson said that, first of all, it's very difficult to explain because it's very spiritual. Like songwriting is very spiritual. And then he goes on to explain that if he were to say, I'm going to sit down right now and I'm going to write the best song ever, that nothing's going to happen. Something in the heavens has to say, look, right now is the time for you to get this information, for you to get this idea. Be open to receive this idea and to then convert it into something meaningful in this physical world.
How do you write a song? How do you write a song?
How do I write a song? Well,
You don't
if I
have a
sat
pen in
down
your
at this
hand and you
piano,
don't try. What would happen?
if I sat here and played some chords, whatever, and say, I'm going to write the best song I've ever written, nothing happens. Something in the heavens has to say, look, this is the time that this is going to be laid on you, and this is when I want you to have it.
Then he goes on to give the example about how he created Billie Jean. He says that one day he was driving his car, and then he got the intention, the idea, that it would be nice to write a great song with a strong bass. But then he let the idea go. He left it aside, he continued on with his life, and then several days later, he got the information, he got the idea, which was an idea of how the beat would sound like. And he was able to conceptualize the idea through his beatboxing. And that is what became the base of Billie Jean.
Now, I remember when I wrote Billie Jean, I was riding in my car down Ventura Boulevard. All I said to myself beforehand, I want to write a song with a great bass hook, you know, and I just let it go, really. And then several days later, you know, the whole
Where did
thing,
that come from?
From above.
And so not only did my direct experience show me that the more I tried to force things, the more blockages I had, but it's something that also caught my attention from Michael Jackson. That he's like, set the intention and then allow the idea to come when the time is right. Which I don't define when the time is right. It's the universe defines when the time is right. That's why Michael Jackson says that I get the information from above, from the heavens. It's not me. It comes from something else. It comes from something superior. And so then I said, okay, let me put this into practice. Let me now take a yoga pose, and instead of forcing the outcome, instead of forcing things to integrate when I say so, let me provide the best input that I can without overtraining. In other words, without burning out during the process, because that's something that I used to do in the past as well. Let me do the best that I can do to the best of my abilities with the resources that I have, while still respecting my physical and mental capacities of the moment. So then I started practicing the next yoga pose when I had the energy for it, when I had the mindset for it, being consistent without forcing the pose to happen. And I noticed that the whole process not only became much more light, but that the pose slowly but surely was making more sense faster without so much friction. And actually within 2 weeks, without wanting it to be in 2 weeks, the side crow was a pose that I was able to get. And I didn't plan it. I didn't say it has to happen in 2 weeks. I just looked at the pose and I'm like, wow, it looks cool to practice. So I'm going to practice it. I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to explore it. And once I approached it through an explorative mindset, it changed the full experience. But not only did it change the full experience, it also allowed the integration to happen naturally. And when I allowed the integration to happen naturally, the integration also happened faster compared to when I used to force the integration. And so I'm starting to verify that what works for me is to not force things anymore, to not demand for things to happen on a certain day or to set certain deadlines no matter what, but instead to do the things that correspond me to do, but then allow that moment of clicking, that moment where things make sense, that moment of integration, that moment of aha, to come when the universe wants it to come. And something very interesting happened today. My boyfriend and I, we live in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, you have a bunch of seagulls. And one of the favorite snacks of seagulls are tiny lobsters. And I've seen a few seagulls with the lobster still alive in their beak. And I've told my boyfriend many times, it's amazing to see them eat the lobster. Like, it's something incredible to see nature in action. And my boyfriend has said many times, wow, I want to see it. I cannot wait to see it. And on the one hand, he was always frustrated when I got to see it, because he wanted to see it. And whenever I went out for a walk and he stayed home, I saw it multiple times without planning it. But him desiring it so much, it never happened to him. And so today, when we were walking, I saw a bench that I like to sit at because I love the hushing sound of the trees. I love to sit on that bench, close my eyes, and just listen to the trees. And so he had to go to work, but I said to him, do you have 5 more minutes? I pointed towards the bench and we went and we sat on the bench. We sat there. I told him, look, close your eyes and listen to the trees. We both closed our eyes, and in less than 30 seconds, I hear like a swooshing sound. And so I opened my eyes, and literally a seagull was flying towards us, landing in front of us, with the lobster completely alive in his beak, like moving and all. And I just tapped my boyfriend on the lap. I don't say anything because I don't want to scare the seagull. And then my boyfriend opened his eyes, and all I hear him say is, wow. And we just sat there quietly, not moving a muscle, watching the seagull turn the lobster into pieces. And the funny thing about everything that my boyfriend said was, it happened when I least desired it. And I'm like, yes. For me, that was yet another verification that that's exactly what Michael Jackson did. Set the intention for it. Oh, it would be nice to see a seagull eating a lobster. Forget it, set it aside. Don't wish for it every single day. Provide the necessary input without overworking yourself. In other words, create the favorable conditions for the thing to happen. For example, you would never see a seagull if you stay inside all day. But if you go outside to take walks, then you have the possibility to see a seagull eating a lobster. So we created the favorable conditions, and then when the time comes to receive the idea or to see the seagull eat the lobster, let it be. Watch it, observe it, and that's it. And so that's what I'm gonna play around with a little bit more. That whenever I catch myself desiring things strongly, to observe all the blockages that I'm receiving from the universe. And instead say, okay, it would be nice to do this, to see this, to experience this. My peace doesn't depend on it, whether it happens or not. I'm completely okay. Leave it aside. Do the necessary things to create the favorable conditions for the thing to express itself. And then, if it happens, to let it happen.